2.5 people. Cole, I hope you're one of them. And Justina, I hope you're one of them as well. Guys, today's an extra lesson, and I said that people can come in or you can stay at home and you can watch it online. So we're going to try and make a video while I'm teaching my two lovely assistants next to me. So if you hear Denise's voice or Zandre's voice, it's because they're asking all the questions. If you have questions afterwards, you can WhatsApp me. But remember, I sent on the groupie, I said the last things that we were doing was origins, all the evolution stuff. Okay, so now remember, population ecology, just to remind you, don't study that at all. We've adapted this prelim paper, so it's not in your prelim paper. We're allowed to do that, especially for the 3-term schools. They don't get to finish their syllabus by prelim, so we're completely legal. We're not breaking any laws. All the genetic stuff, that's going to be in paper 2, so we're not looking at that either today. And then that is also for paper 1. So the only thing that you need to be worried about, or that you are most concerned about, should be the most recent things that we've done is evolution. Now for most of you, before I got sick, we got to do origins, fundamental aspects, and formation of a new species. But I know hominid studies, I sent you videos last week, and you were supposed to kind of do it on your own. And I know it's tough. And the evolution in present times. And
the videos were for fundamentals, not for
yes, yes. So Denise just reminded me, so I actually sent you, you should have all of this. Then obviously with those goes all the outcomes questions. If you're able to answer all the outcomes questions, then you should be able to pass the paper. Now, if you look at this on your what to studies, you'll actually see the document looks slightly different, and some of the text is blue and underlined. Those are what you call hyperlinks. For those of you that are dwarf like me, a hyperlink, when you click on it, it opens up onto a YouTube video. So you should have all the videos, okay? But for my purple class, because my brain was half diseased with serious flu, I did not give you a pack that looks like this. Okay, so it says fundamental aspects of evolution. So these are actually the answers to this question, fundamental aspects of evolution. So it goes from question 1 to question 5. And you can actually see it's numbered there. There's outcomes 1, there's outcomes 2, there's outcomes 3, and then you'll also have 5 there, 4, and you'll also have 5, which is the examples of artificial domestication is part of this. Okay, so that is actually 4 and 5. But we're going to do one of these individually, every question quickly we're going to do, because both Denise and Zandre was unable to answer some of the questions. So I'm going to try and explain only the questions that they couldn't get from the notes and that they couldn't get from the videos. Okay, so let me know if you get stuck as well. This handout, which is also now on the group, is not only just fundamental aspects of evolution, but if you go over to right at the end, okay, right at the end, it has formation of a new species. Now, all the answers for formation of new species are on these notes. So define species, that would be number 1. Okay. The causes of variation we've already done, and those are given here. So this is outcomes 2's answers. Mutations, genetic recombination. Okay, we also said crossing over, because they might talk about crossing over when we do, when you think back of meiosis.
It's not all the answers, it's actually very, it's not just this, there's more information on the video than there is on that paper. Because this is from your video.
Yes, there's more information on the video, yes. Okay, so Denise says there's more information on outcomes 2 on the video than there is on these notes. So remember, these are like short. These are for the lazy people. Okay. So please watch the video for those as well. But on the video, they do give you the 3 causes as well. Describe how variations in populations like the Galapagos finches came about. We did explain that, and in class I actually referred to the picture of the birdies. But I'm going to do that today again, okay? Because the best way you can explain how the variations happened, the example they're going to use is the Galapagos finches. And with this question, they always refer to Darwin's natural selection. So when you see describe changes in a population, they're actually also talking about, what I'm saying is, if they ask a question of how did there come about changes in any kind of animal, like the Galapagos finches, your answer would involve using natural selection by Darwin. So you need to know the theory of Darwin, and you need to give examples. All right. So that question, 2 and 3 are fundamental aspects of evolution, and describe how those 2 changes came about. They kind of go hand in hand. Okay. And whenever you see a question like that, you are going to use the recipe I gave you. Where's the paper that says rough? There we go. So this is just my rough stuff, okay? Whenever you see a question like that, explain how an animal changed over time according to Darwin. The moment you get a question like that, explain changes in a population according to Darwin. The moment you see that, you know you are going to use those bullets that we have in Origins. The ones that says, excuse me, I'm still sick. The ones that says, that's in the Origins page, and it says, individuals, there's more offspring born, there's variations, there must be a change in the environment. So all of these, you will use that acronym that I said is called Many Vets Rescue Babies. So let me just revise that again for the people that missed it. Whenever you get asked a question, this is the number 1 question that is usually asked in a paper, always. You will use whatever change in the population occurs due to Darwin. If you see the word according to Darwin, or you see the word according to natural selection, you will use the acronym Many Vets Rescue Babies. Many Vets Rescue Babies. Okay? So, give me another color pen there. So we know that, thanks. So we know that the moment we see Darwin or natural selection and they want you to explain it, they're not going to ask you to just give back all those points. Okay? They're not going to expect you to memorize these and write them down. You will always be asked to apply them to a certain situation. It's always going to be applied to a certain situation. That's part of Origins, okay? So how do we actually do that? So, what Darwin is saying, thank you, when they ask a question like this, you are going to write your template down. This is your template for the perfect answer, all right? And you're going to say, more, now we know that it's supposed to be more babies are born than an environment can sustain. Amongst the babies, there are variations amongst those babies. I know Rory fits if I use the word babies, but you can say babies, or you can say offspring if you want to sound like Rory, okay? But either way, you will get the marks, okay? So according to Darwin, natural selection, the points that they give you to study For your templates, many Vets Rescue babies will use these keywords. There's always more babies born than an environment can sustain. There's variations amongst these babies. Now, nothing is going to happen, nothing is going to change unless the environment changes. The environment must change in order for something to happen. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Okay? Now, amongst those babies that were born, there were variations. And as soon as the environment changes, okay, what will happen when the environment changes is that certain of these babies, those babies that have the traits more suited to the change or to the new environment, okay, there are going to be certain babies that have traits that's more suited to the new environment, and some they don't. Some they don't. So this is just one of those things. Anytime animals have babies, there are slight variations amongst the babies. Some slightly darker, some slightly lighter, a few smaller, some a bit bigger. Pigeons have long legs or short legs, or stronger wings or weaker wings. There's always variations. If you look quickly at any kind of animal population, they all look the same. But if you really sit and you look intently, you'll see that there are small variations, just as we see among humans, okay? But when that environment changes, certain traits amongst those babies will be more suited to the new environment, and some won't, okay? Is it won't or don't? Well, won't? I don't know. Now, the thing is that the babies that are suited is going to be able to survive. So you will find survival of the best suited babies. So those babies with a suitable trait for that change in the environment is going to live. They're going to survive. The ones that don't have that trait are not going to survive, and they're going to die out over time, whatever the change is. Okay? Now, obviously, common sense tells you that those survival, the best suited babies that survive, will reproduce. So you're going to see reproduction amongst the surviving babies. Obviously, when they mature, the babies are not going to make babies. But because they survive, they are suited for that new environment, and then when they grow up, they're going to reproduce with one another. And guess what? If those with suited traits reproduce with one another, so the surviving ones reproduce, their offspring or their babies will inherit that suitable trait. Inherit. Okay, so if they inherit that suitable trait, it means all the consecutive generations afterwards will be suited for the environment, and eventually they will all survive. Those that did not have the trait suitable is going to die out, and they will go extinct, and you won't see them anymore. Okay, so this is what Darwin said. But, so that would be fundamental aspects of evolution, Darwin's evolution by natural selection. Example we're going to do now, so we're going to look at the finches, all right? But it also speaks about the origin question, where we had natural selection, origins outcomes. Yes, so this one. So where we talk about the role players, that's also role players. That's also talking about what Darwin said versus what Lamarck said. Okay, those are the two role players. But Darwin is the most important one. So let's do an example. So if that was the question, all right, you're now using Darwin's theory of evolution, or natural selection rather, in a specific scenario. Let's use the scenario of the Galapagos finches. So we're kind of answering these three outcome questions at the same time. And for that, I'm going to use a different color pen. Maybe, I don't know if we can see the pink. Give me red or purple, green. Yeah, maybe the green will work better. No. Let's use the purple. No, it looks like blue. Okay, guys, we're stuck on pink. I hope you can see the pink. I'll take a photo of this page when I'm done, and then also put it on the group so you can enlarge it if it doesn't make sense. Okay, so we are looking at the Galapagos finches. So you have this silly little picture of all the birdies. But what it basically just says, and I'm going to attempt to draw these beautiful birds, and you know my artistic abilities are most amazing. Okay, so the scenario they will give you, they will always give you context. So they will give you the text box like this, and in there they will put info regarding some kind of animal. Okay, so if the scenario that they are giving you on Darwin's finches, okay, so if they are using Darwin's finches, they will give you a paragraph with information on there. They will provide you with a source. They're not going to want you to suck up an example of anything, just out of randomly. They will give you information regarding it. So show us those birdies again. The picture of the birdies that we just had there. Okay, so if this is the picture that they give you of the birds, I know because it's now printed small, okay, and my iPad is somewhere and I can't find it as usual. I'm too lazy to look for the picture. Okay, so somewhere the video stopped in the middle of nowhere. Rosandra's phone is useless. We'll get a professional cameraman in here. So where we stopped is we said they will give you a source with specific information about an animal. And what they want to do is they actually want you to, where's my outcomes now? Non-demo card. Okay. So you'll see that under fundamental aspects of evolution, question 2 and question 3 goes hand in hand with question 3 on formation of new species. It's kind of the same thing. Okay. They're just asking it in 3 different ways. And so we know now the recipe. Whenever they ask, explain the changes in a population according to Darwin's natural selection theory, you will get a specific scenario. Now they'll give you a source, they'll give you information regarding the animal. One of the examples they can give is of Darwin's finches. Okay. So let's do that example, and I'm going to attempt to draw. Shame. Poor whoever is watching my drawings. Please don't show it to the art teacher. I will fail art again. So Darwin said originally there was a group of birds. We call them the ancestral population, or just the ancestor, So, and this ancestral group of finches kind of looked the same. They kind of had, look at my sexy finch, okay? A rounded beak, the top was rounded, and the bottom was kind of flat. And they originally, they were seed eaters. Okay. But some of the brothers and sisters didn't inherit the sexy beak. They inherited the short stumpy one. Alright. And some got the long flat one. Hi, sister. So amongst the brothers and sisters, some were more good looking than others. But they all didn't get the same beak. Slight differences, not massive differences, slight differences amongst all of these. But now what happened with the Galapagos finches is that they reckon at some point the Galapagos Islands were kind of together. They separated from one another, and there's a lot of islands in the Galapagos area. But let's just draw or talk about 3. So that's island A, and that's B, and that's island C. So let's imagine there's only 3 islands. What's going to happen is because these 3 islands are so very separate from one another, and they're in a part of the world where the weather is crazy, these islands are going to be different, okay, in the weather that you see there, the amount of rain you get, you know, the average temperature that you get there, how much wind is there, and then obviously that will imply it's going to have different types of plants growing there. And if the plants are different, the whole environment, the types of insects and rats and snakes and things that you get there will be different. So all of these are differences amongst these islands. So they all have different, basically, environments. They're all different environments. They're not the same. Now, I'm not sure, but by some fluke or a massive tornado or for whatever reason, this ancestral population probably lived on one of these islands, and then for some weird reason, the wind blew a third of them onto Island C. Shame, they ended there. Another group blew over to that island. Shame, Sistofoito, never going to see your brothers and sisters again. And those there. Now the islands are so far apart that, and the wind is so strong, and these birds are small, so they can't actually fly from the one to the other island. So they get isolated there. So you get an isolated group there. They can't get to B. These are isolated. So the same family now got separated into 3. Now all of this information, if I frame this in pink, this would be your source material. So in the exam, source material. In the exam, that is actually what you will get when you get asked a question. Explain changes in the population. The question will literally say, explain the changes in the population of finches on the Galapagos Islands according to Darwin. So your answer is going to, what I'm now writing in pink. The ideal answer is in pink, okay? But to answer that, you're obviously going to use your template. Many vets rescue babies, and we all know what that stands for. But when you get to answer your question and you've got a source, you need to use the source material to replace certain keywords, so it's applied to just the finches. So where it says more babies are born than the environment can sustain, we are going to instead say more baby finches are born than the environment can sustain. So you don't just generally talk about babies, we are now talking about the finches, because that's the information they gave you in the source. So you're going to replace babies by saying more baby finches are born than the environment can sustain. Now we know already, I told you, there are variations amongst those babies, remember? But you need to say that. There's variations amongst the babies regarding what? Regarding what? We just saw the variations is in their beaks. Okay, so you need to say what the variation is. It's regardless of their color, or how fast they can run, or how good their eyesight is. This is going to be about their beaks, because they're going to now be dependent on different types of food because the environment changed. So there's variations amongst the babies regarding their beaks. And you can say something like their beak shapes or the beak sizes or anything like that. But you are saying the variations is in their beaks. That's what we're talking about. Now the environment changes. You need to say because we now find the ancestral population, the ancestral group, ancestral finches on different islands. And you'll have to say, because that environment changed, we now have different islands, we will have different foods available. And you can actually repeat that whole story I had in the corner there. On these islands, the weather will be different, the rainfall, the temperature will be different, the wind, and then especially different plants and insects and things that you find on that island. You have to explain what those changes are. So you have to, in detail, tell me how the environment is different. So explain the change in the island. That's what you literally have to do there. You can't just say, okay, the environment changes. How do I know you're talking about it's light and dark? No, you need to say for the finches that the environment changed in such a way that the weather patterns is different. So you'll have different rain, temperature, wind, different plants, different insects, which means their food will be different. They will actually now have different foods. That's what it's about. Different foods. Okay, so certain babies on certain islands have traits that are more suitable to that island, and some don't. So let's imagine Alright, so remember when the environment changes, you need to say exactly how the environment has changed. And in this case, we're going to talk about the different foods available because the island's weather patterns are different. There's web interruptions. So then obviously certain of those variant babies, certain of the babies, because of their different beak sizes, some of them will naturally have a trait that's more suitable. And to get the marks, you need to literally say what those traits are. So you can't just say there's certain traits more suited to the new environment. You will say the trait that is more suited to the new environments is the trait of having sharper beaks. Since there's no seeds, they can only eat insects, so the sharper beaks would be the suitable trait. Now, obviously, that means the survival of the sharper beaked finches is going to happen. And because the sharper beaked finches grow up, they will reproduce amongst themselves. And you will say reproduction amongst the surviving sharp beaked babies when they mature. That'll happen. That means when the sharp beaked survivors reproduced and they lay eggs and those babies hatch, the babies will actually inherit the suitable trait, which is the sharp beaks. So the blue that I wrote down is your template for answering the question. The pink I wrote down is what you replace or you add in for a specific example. Now in the one video, there's the one about the lizards, the dark lizards and the white lizards. So give us another blue pen, another pen. Okay, let's use another pen. Let's say the lizard thing. Let's use the lizard one. The lizard one is a really easy example. Okay? Yeah. So what's going to happen if they're going to give you a scenario and they're going to say, there's your source, and they're going to tell you about the lizards, and I gave you two pictures of the dark lizard and the light lizard. And then ask you to explain to me how that has happened. What's going on? What's going on? You've got, neighboring areas, and in the one area only find dark, and in the other area only find light lizards. Obviously, we're going to start answering a question like that using our template. Many vets rescue babies. So from the beginning, let's now fill in the actual information. So we know the many stands for more. What are we talking about? Lizard babies, nah? So more lizard babies will be born than the environment can sustain. I'm too lazy to write the whole out. Amongst those lizard babies, there is variation. Variation in what? Yes, that's correct. There's going to be variation in color amongst the babies. You're going to have some that are slightly darker and some that are slightly lighter. So there will be variations in the color amongst those lizard babies. Add lizard babies, okay? Let's say then the environment changes. Let's say, for example, there is a, yes, let's say deforestation happens. Some idiot decides, oh, we don't need the Amazon anymore, and deforestation occurs. Okay, if deforestation suddenly overnight occurs, what's going to happen is that instead of having dark shaded environment, the dark shaded areas disappear, and suddenly you have exposed light areas like sand, or you're just going to see the soil. Okay, so if you have your environment changed now, and you explained how it changed, so if the environment has changed, you're going to get marks for saying how it's changed. So you actually have to explain the difference. If we have like deforestation happening, you're going to now have the darker areas disappear and you're going to have exposed light areas. The traits that's most suited for the light areas will be the lighter lizards. Those lighter lizards will survive. When they reproduce, we have light lizards surviving. And the result is that their babies will inherit this light trait. You can put it in inverted brackets if you can't think of a better word. So the mark allocation I've shown in pink now. You don't get any marks. There's no marks allocated for simply talking or listing many vets rescue babies, saying more babies, there's variations, the environment changes, certain traits survive, they reproduce, they have babies. Saying that gets you no marks at all, 0. You will only get marks for saying the detail related to specifically the lizards in this example. So you have to say more lizards, okay, babies are born than the environment can sustain. There are variations, you'll get a mark for variation, but you'll have to say in the color amongst the babies. So best would actually to say that there's lighter and some darker babies, okay, in that same group of babies that was originally born. Then you say the environment changes, but you're going to get a mark for saying how it's changed. You need to explain the difference. You're going to say, for example, deforestation happened, all right? You'll get a mark for whatever you think made the change. So we now have lighter areas and no more dark areas. You have to tell me how it changed. And sometimes that information is not in your original source. You have to thumb suck that. Obviously, when we're talking about the skin color of a lizard, we're going to talk about the environment that it is in. Because the trait that is most suited is going to be the lighter lizard. Through is going to be, see the dark lizards and they're going to be eaten. Okay, so then you'll have to say the survival of the lighter lizards happens. Reproduction amongst the surviving lizards occur, and the babies will inherit that light trait. So the specific detail regarding this animal is what gets marks. And in this case, that will be 9 marks. So just listing the traits is going to give you 0. You have to refer to the actual examples. Okay, so these examples are in that video, and I hope you watch those. All right. So let's have a look at, you took your book away, Denise's book. Okay, so Lizandre, we were at your book. Okay, never mind. Okay, this is Lizandre's book. It's copyrighted, but you're welcome to offer her a good price, and she will give you her notes. So, origin about origin, an idea about origin, they're on it. We covered all of them.
There's no way to answer question 4.
How is new scientific evidence accepted in society? Where's our printed out notes?
It's originally in the notes.
Okay. There.
I think it's this. Oh.
That's outcomes 4. Okay. So in case you lost, how new scientific evidence is introduced? Outcomes 4. All right. So
You wrote it there.
yeah.
Did I write it?
So I think we've answered all of them, and they are on these notes of Charles Darwin. Okay. That's also the first place where you're introduced to Charles Darwin and his natural selection theory. So that's the first time we actually see this Many Vets Rescue Babies thing. The only guy that disagreed with him or had a different explanation is Lamarck. And Lamarck is the dude that I said the most common example he uses is of the lizard, of the giraffe. How did giraffes get their long necks? More and more and more until eventually 10 generations later, you know, they all have long necks. We know that's nonsense because you can't inherit something that your parents didn't have. Okay. So Darwin would rather say the ancestral group were a mixture. Some had long necks and some had short necks. And then whatever happened in the environment made the long necks survive and the short necks die out. Okay, so that's origin. Then, when we go to fundamental aspects, there's Andre's book, she's in charge. Okay, fundamental aspects, they're saying, describe the difference between punctuated equilibrium and gradualism. So, we know that these changes happen. We just don't know, do they happen fast or do they happen slowly? Does it occur quickly or does it take a lot of time? So for that, you'll have these notes, okay? And it's explained there that gradualism says that there's slight little changes happening frequently. So species 1 changes into species 2, changes into species 3, but you don't distinctly see now we have one type, then we have another type, then we have. It's slight changes over a long period of time, gradual changes. The other guess is punctuated equilibrium, that a species will exist looking the way they look for a long time and then we'll have a very quick change, a dramatic change over a very short period of time, and then suddenly see species 2. And then they will exist like that for a very long time until there's a quick change, and then they'll exist looking differently again. Now both of these are also theories, and we don't actually know what the answer is because we didn't see these changes over time. It's a guess. We don't know if it was a small gradualism belongs to that diagram, and punctuated equilibrium belongs to this diagram. For some reason it printed funny. So we don't know, was it a quick thing and then nothing happens for a long time and then there's a quick change and then nothing happens, or was it gradual? So those are just simply two definitions that you need to know about, okay? Then explain Darwin's theory of natural selection. We just did that. Give some examples of natural selection. We did that. But now it says define artificial selection. So natural selection is what nature does. If there's a change in the environment, nature is going to kind of make certain species survive and others not. And now in the examples of of artificial selection, I gave the examples of the doggies. Okay, now everybody are bred for certain reasons. If you want a doggie to be eating up everything that comes into the house and no one can come through the gate, you are going to intentionally pick a mommy that looks like aggressive and big and strong and nasty, and a daddy that look big and aggressive and strong and nasty. Because you can predict that if the mommy and the daddy is both like that, or both like that, the babies are going to be like that. So instead of nature choosing, like with natural selection, nature chooses. Humans can interfere and do what we call artificial selection. So this is when humans actually choose. The process of breeding animals or even cultivating plants for specific traits. We choose the desirable trait and we force those two parents together. If I want cute little doggies like this, a little lap sitter, I'm going to have a mommy looking like, I guarantee you the babies are not going to look like that. So either you breed them intentionally like this or like that for whatever purpose you want. And that's called artificial selection. So artificial selection is almost like natural selection, except it's not nature choosing the suitable, desirable trait. It's humans choosing the desirable trait. Okay. And you have to give one example in domesticated animals, and the best would be the dog example, or even in crops. The crops one, they talk about the wild mustard plant that looked like this. Now, obviously, there would be little variations of them. So, Denise decides, okay, she likes the variant that ends up looking like broccoli. So, what she will do is she will go into the veld or in the bushes or wherever wild mustards grow, and she will look at the flowers they make. Those with flowers that are bushy or fat and white like a cauliflower, she will intentionally then go and collect pollen and artificially fertilize a plant that looks suitable to her with itself. And that self-pollination over many generations is going to lead her to have plants with a suitable trait. So you can do the same thing with plants. Okay, so that answers all the fundamental aspects of evolution. So you should have that printout as well, fundamental aspects of evolution. You should have that as well. Okay, then we have formation of a new species. The printout is right at the back, but for some stupid reason, I did not give you all the answers. So I've just sent it via my lovely assistant Lizandre onto the group, but we know it happens. We call the change in a species, we call it speciation. Speciation is just another word for evolution, or one species changing into another, okay? We know if the species is not suited, it'll go extinct. What we've just done is natural selection. That can happen, so a new species can be formed. Sometimes there's these random mutations that makes a new trait that is that's survivable, and you can get a new species as well. But genetics is kind of against that idea. So the most popular theory is this one, which is Darwin's one. Okay? Now, remember with Darwin, we said that there's variations. So, formation of a new species just asks you what the three main causes of variation are. That could either happen by random mutation. So, look at the picture of the lions. This is a white lion is not actually an albino. It's a variant. It's not an albino, it's a variant. So you do actually get normal looking lions, and then you get lions that are white with beautiful blue eyes, and they're just the variant. They might not survive very well because they are not very camouflaged. And then they can't hunt, and then they can't eat, and then they've been artificially selected and bred by people.